She arrived alone. No one was expecting her. No one knew her, but everyone judged her. An older black woman, humble and composed, walking with quiet determination through a luxury hospital where every detail screamed exclusivity. In seconds, she became the target of stares, whispers, and barriers, treated like an intruder as if her very presence was a mistake. But what no one realized was that she carried a reason powerful enough to walk through any closed door, and what looked like just another visit hid a truth no one in that place was ready to face, a truth that could turn that hospital upside down. She didn't shout, didn't beg, didn't back down. She simply stood there, eyes filled with something no one could quite name. Maybe it was pain, maybe faith, or maybe it was the strength of someone who had lost everything except her dignity. They tried to push her away, called security, made up excuses to keep her out, but she knew exactly why she was there, and nothing in that glass fortress could stop her. Because when a heart carries purpose, it doesn't need permission to beat. And hers was beating for something yet to be revealed. This story isn't about charity. It's not about pity. It's about a collision of worlds between those who believe they own everything and those who have learned to endure everything. You're about to witness what happens when an ordinary woman challenges the system without raising her voice, and how pain, when it walks hand in hand with faith, becomes a force that can't be ignored. What started as just another bureaucratic case becomes a lesson no one in that place will ever forget. And the most powerful part? They only found out too late who she really was, so tell me, what would make a woman endure humiliation, prejudice, and closed doors without giving up? What lies behind the silence of someone who has lost it all, yet still chooses to stand tall? This story will give you the answer, but not right away. You'll have to stay until the end, because sometimes the biggest revelation only comes when no one's expecting it anymore.
Before diving into this exciting story, we want to make sure you don't miss out on any of our incredible content. If you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, now is the perfect time to do so. By subscribing, you'll become a valued member of our growing community, where we share amazing stories, insightful lessons, and much more. Don't wait any longer. Hit that subscribe button now and join us on this amazing journey.
The sun hadn't even pierced through the morning fog when Olivia stepped through the automatic doors of the most luxurious hospital in Seattle. Her worn-out shoes made an odd sound against the polished marble, as if whispering, "This woman doesn't belong here." But she kept walking, one step at a time, steady. In her hand, a folded sheet with a printed visitation permit. On her chest, an old silver crucifix hung from her neck like an invisible shield. The receptionist didn't bother to hide the side glance she gave when she saw that elderly black woman in simple clothes, gently holding a patched fabric handbag. "Name of the patient?" she asked in a voice as sharp as glass, not even lifting her eyes from the monitor. "Elizabeth Carter. I came to visit her. I have written permission." Olivia's voice was soft, but it carried weight. The kind of voice that doesn't shout but doesn't bow either. The receptionist typed slowly, deliberately. She sighed, scanned Olivia from head to toe, then clicked the intercom and said curtly, "Dr. Sophia, we've got a situation." In less than 2 minutes, the woman appeared. Immaculate white uniform, pressed coat, confident heels striking the floor. Dr. Sofia Ribeiro walked through the lobby like she was crossing a stage. One glance was enough to understand what she thought. Her eyes landed on Olivia with the coldness of someone judging what doesn't belong. She didn't ask the reason for the visit, nor did she look at the paper. She simply said, "You'll need to wait over there, please. This is a restricted area. Visits only by appointment and with full clearance." Olivia tried to hand her the paper but was ignored. Right next to her, a white woman in a designer coat walked in loudly on her phone, received a smile from the receptionist, and was escorted to the elevator with no questions asked. The contrast was blatant. The hospital sparkled, glass everywhere. Modern chandeliers, digital panels. And there was Olivia, motionless, carrying a pain no one seemed to see. She squeezed the crucifix between her fingers. It wasn't just jewelry. It was a reminder of who she was, of what her daughter believed, of what she had come to do. A young nurse passed by and gave her a brief look, curious, maybe even respectful. But he kept walking. No one asked who the woman was, standing out in that sterile setting. The hospital was made of glass, but it hid more than it revealed. And Olivia just wanted to see a patient. Just needed 1 minute. But in that place, where appearances were everything, silence cut deeper than any word. The wait was long, and the humiliation even longer. But she didn't back down. She stood tall, never leaning against a wall. Posture straight. Eyes fixed on the floor. There was something about that woman that all the luxury in the world couldn't erase. The dignity of someone who had weathered far fiercer storms than a closed door. And it was in that very moment, just as another obstacle loomed ahead, that something in Olivia began to shift, quietly, inside. But she didn't yet know what was waiting for her in the next chapter. Morning crept forward slowly, but the front desk felt frozen in time. Olivia, still standing in the same corner, felt the stares piling on her like dust. Some people walked by and whispered, others simply looked away, as if her presence was too uncomfortable to acknowledge. Dr. Sophia returned with slow, deliberate steps. She held a clipboard in her hand, but her gaze wasn't one of analysis, it was judgment. "Ms. Olivia, right?" she said, with not a hint of politeness. "I need you to provide a government-issued ID, proof of residence, your medical insurance number, and a second digital authorization signed through the family portal. The system hasn't confirmed your access yet." "But I already gave everything to the family's attorney," Olivia replied, her voice unchanged. "He told me the clearance was already in the system." "Then have him come back here again," Sophia interrupted, lifting the clipboard like a gavel, closing the matter. "Until then, I can't authorize the visit. I'm sure you understand. Protocols. It wasn't about understanding, it was about class, about color, about origin." Olivia knew it even if no one said it aloud. Those protocols only seemed to apply to her, certainly not to the elegant woman in heels who had just walked in and been ushered away, smiling, by a nurse. "The patient is in a coma," Sophia added, shrugging. "There's no reason to disrupt the ICU now. Wait for her to improve. Or come back another day, please don't insist." Olivia looked around, searching for the slightest hint of compassion in someone's eyes. But everything there was too smooth, too clean, too impersonal. A space designed to impress, not to embrace. The white leather furniture, the light wood panels, the ambient music, everything screamed silent power. And she, with her worn crucifix, felt like an intruder in a showroom. She took a deep breath, didn't argue, simply said, "All right, I'll come back." But the silence that followed carried more weight than any argument. It was the kind of silence that wounds, that humiliates, that lingers. Sophia turned her back without another word, satisfied in her own authority. And Olivia, she stood still for a few seconds, not out of fear, but to hold back the storm rising behind her eyes. On her way out, she passed the same young nurse. He looked at her again, but said nothing. There was something in his eyes that felt like an apology. But silent apologies don't open doors. And Olivia knew she would still have to fight, not with noise, but with quiet persistence. Because sometimes, what seems like an impossible barrier is only the beginning of a path that must be walked with faith. And Olivia hadn't given up. Not yet. The reception clock read 3:14 p.m. when Olivia returned. She carried a printed copy of the authorization, signed and stamped. She had walked over 40 minutes to a print shop since she didn't own a printer at home. She came back alone, tired, but determined. Upon arrival, she handed the documents to the receptionist with a firm yet kind gaze. The young woman hesitated, took the papers, and murmured, "1 moment, please." On the other side of the counter, Sophia appeared like a storm in high heels. She snatched the documents without a word of thanks, flipped through them for a few seconds, and then, with a sneer, said aloud what many may have thought but never dared to say. "Do you really think you can just walk in here because you have a piece of paper? This isn't a bus station, ma'am. We follow protocol here." The entire reception froze. The whispers died. The soft background music was drowned out by the echo of public humiliation. Olivia looked around, feeling heat rise to her face. But she didn't speak, didn't cry, didn't even lower her eyes. She simply pressed the crucifix on her chest tighter, as if begging heaven to keep her upright. "I just want to see the patient. I'm not asking for a favor. I only want to exercise a right," she finally said. Her voice, though soft, sliced through the room like a silent blade. But Sophia had already made her decision. "Security!" she called out bluntly. "This woman is causing a disturbance. I need her escorted out immediately." Two security guards arrived with heavy steps. One of them looked at Olivia with visible discomfort, but stepped forward. "Ma'am, we need you to leave, please. We can walk you to the door." "You don't need to walk me, I know the way," she replied, with the same dignity she had brought in with her. Every eye followed her. The woman in simple clothes, being thrown out of a place where lives were saved, yet where souls were still judged by appearances. She walked slowly, as if carrying something on her shoulders far heavier than injustice. Her body was leaving, but the pain remained, like a scar etched into the cold glass of that hospital. On the sidewalk, Olivia paused for a moment. The sky had turned gray. A sharp wind cut down the avenue. She looked up, closed her eyes, and let the air in slowly. No one there knew what she carried. No one knew who was in that hospital room, bound to her by something far deeper than blood or official documents. And if the world didn't want to hear her story, then she would tell it another way. Because sometimes, humiliation doesn't silence you. It prepares the ground for a miracle. The clouds hung low over Seattle's skyline, as if the sky itself carried the same weight as Olivia's heart. She walked down the hill toward the Central District, crossing wide streets with short, steady steps, fighting against the wind that tugged at her worn scarf. Cars sped by, traffic lights changed like nothing had happened. But inside her, something was both breaking and holding on. She stopped in front of a small corner cafe with a faded green awning and the smell of fresh brewed coffee drifting out the door. It was the place where she used to meet her daughter on Sunday afternoons. Now it was just shelter. She sat at their usual table by the window, where the gray light filtered in lazily. From her bag, she pulled out her old cell phone and dialed, with trembling hands. The call went straight to voicemail. She tried again. On the third attempt, a firm voice answered, "Edwin McAllister." "It's Olivia, sir. They didn't let me in. They called security. Even with the authorization in my hand, they said it wasn't enough." The lawyer took a deep breath on the other end. "They can't do that. I'll handle it myself. I'll be there with you tomorrow. No one will treat you like that again." She whispered a thank you, then hung up and stared out at the street for several long minutes. Her coffee cooled in the cup, but she didn't notice. Her thoughts wandered far, back to her daughter's last hug, to the note she had left on the fridge with a hand-drawn heart, to the laughter that once filled their home and now echoed only in memory. "God," she murmured to herself without finishing the sentence. It was a plea, a confession, a memory. She touched the small crucifix around her neck, as if searching for warmth in the cold metal. That was all she had left now, faith and memory. A young couple entered the cafe and sat at the table beside her, laughing loudly. Olivia didn't look at them, but one detail caught her eye. The woman was holding a book of poetry, the same one she had given her daughter years ago. Her heart tightened. That simple, ordinary scene stirred a kind of ache that has no name. It felt like her daughter was there somehow, between the pages of that book and the rising steam of the coffee. In that simple cafe, Olivia realized she wouldn't return to the hospital just for justice. She would return for something greater, for something that couldn't be spoken in words or explained with papers. It was a promise, a bond that reached beyond death and demanded presence. Olivia wasn't looking for revenge or even forgiveness. She simply wanted to honor what had been taken from her so brutally. And in that moment, as the wind picked up and rustled the leaves outside, she knew, tomorrow, she would not be alone, and nothing would ever be the same again. The day broke with a clear sky, but the air was cold, the kind of cold that seems designed to test the resolve of those who step outside with a wounded heart. Olivia stood on the sidewalk in front of the hospital, fingers clasped tightly around her bag, the crucifix hidden beneath her worn coat. Beside her, dressed in a dark suit and wearing a grave expression, Edwin McAllister typed something on his phone. When the hospital's revolving door opened, the two of them entered together, and this time the sound of her shoes on the marble floor no longer felt like a plea for permission. It was a return. The receptionist widened her eyes. She didn't say a word. She just hit the intercom. Sophia appeared seconds later, her heels echoing like a warning. But the moment she saw Edwin, her expression shifted. She tried to smile, pretended to be surprised, but McAllister's tone was sharp and formal. "This woman has formal authorization to visit the patient Elizabeth Carter. All documents have already been uploaded to the system. Any further obstruction will be considered abuse and reported accordingly." Sophia bit her lower lip and swallowed hard. There was never any intention to prevent anything. We were just following protocol. "I apologize if there was any misunderstanding." Olivia said nothing. She didn't have to. Her silence now spoke louder than words. She was escorted by a different nurse, younger, more respectful. The hallway was the same, glass walls, flawless white lighting, the scent of expensive disinfectant. But the way people looked at her had changed. There was tension in the air, as if they were finally beginning to wonder who she was and why she was there. As they passed a glass partition, Olivia caught a glimpse of Sophia at the reception desk watching her, and for the first time, the woman seemed to falter. The lady she had once sent away was now walking with a lawyer by her side and a gaze that asked for no permission, only presence. The kind of presence that carries a truth so powerful, no title can ignore it. When they reached the ICU doors, Edwin gently held her arm and said, "This part is yours now, Miss Olivia. The rest will work itself out." She nodded, took a deep breath, and stepped inside. In there, among machines, monitors, and silence, something far greater than paperwork was about to happen. And she was ready, because some visits aren't just meetings. They're answers the soul demands, and the truth, even when silent, always finds a way to be heard. The ICU hallway was quiet, muffled. Each step echoed as if time had slowed down. Olivia walked with a heavy heart, but her face remained serene. Beside her, the nurse typed in a code at the door of room 303. As soon as the green light blinked on, the door opened gently, revealing a spacious room with large windows and sheer curtains that let the morning light in like a whisper. In the center of the room lay the woman, Elizabeth Carter, the businesswoman whose fame and fortune meant nothing to Olivia. What brought her there was something else, something no biography could ever explain. Outside the room, Edwin was speaking with a doctor about the procedure. And it was in that moment that the revelation came. The physician, dressed in a white coat embroidered with the hospital emblem, spoke in a hushed voice. "The patient is recovering well. The transplanted organ was a young heart, fully compatible, donated by a woman named Olivia Santos." Edwin froze. What was the name? Olivia Santos, 23 years old, a compatible donor. The surgery took place 3 days ago. The attorney didn't respond. He turned to look at the door of the room where Olivia now sat by the bedside. What she didn't yet know was about to be revealed. Inside the room, she held the patient's hand and whispered, "You don't know me, but my daughter's life now beats within you, and that means more than any recognition ever could." Meanwhile, down the hall, Sophia received a copy of the patient file, as required by protocol. As she read the donor's full name, her face went pale. The paper trembled in her hands. Olivia Santos. It was the name she had heard earlier when Olivia had been humiliated right there in the lobby. And most unsettling of all, her own daughter's name was also Isabella, the exact same age as the donor. Sophia felt the ground vanish beneath her feet. A realization cracked like thunder in her mind. The woman she had looked down on was the mother of the young woman who had saved the hospital's most important patient. The mother of someone who had given her very life, so another could continue. There was no way to undo it now. No way to erase what she'd said, or take back the contempt she had shown. And now there was no way to escape the ache of conscience. Olivia remained silent. She didn't know the full extent of the coincidence, but in her heart, she could feel that something greater was unfolding. Elizabeth still slept, but on the monitor her heart beat strong. The same heart that had for years been loved, nurtured, and cherished by Olivia. The same heart now beating in a different body. And there, between machines and memories, the invisible began to make itself impossible to ignore, and pain at last began to speak its name. The room was calm, bathed in a soft, almost ethereal light. The machines pulsed in a steady rhythm, as if lulling the space into a kind of mechanical breath. Olivia entered alone this time. Edwin remained outside, honoring a moment that belonged to no one but her and the sleeping patient. Elizabeth Carter, the celebrated businesswoman, now lay fragile, tubes and monitors connected to her body. But Olivia didn't see power. She didn't see status. She saw only a woman in silence, sustained by the heart that once beat inside her daughter's chest. She walked forward slowly, touched the edge of the blanket with her fingertips, then sat in the chair beside the bed. The crucifix swayed gently around her neck. There was silence, but not an empty kind. It was a dense silence filled with meaning, one only understood by those who've buried a piece of their soul. "You don't know me," she began, her voice heavy. "And maybe you'll never remember this moment. But the life beating inside you now used to be mine." She closed her eyes for a moment, and when she opened them again, tears brimmed, but not out of anger, out of surrender. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small white handkerchief hand-stitched with the initials IS. It had belonged to her daughter. She placed it gently on the patient's chest, like a blessing for the heart's new home. Isabella was light, the kind that doesn't shout, but still brightens everything. She never complained about the hard life. She smiled, even on the worst days. Olivia let out a short, tearful laugh. She used to say her heart beat too strong, and now it still beats. It just doesn't beat for me anymore. The tears came, silent and steady. She didn't sob. She just cried quietly, like watering a wounded garden. She took the patient's hand and held it in her own. The warmth of that touch was real, and it was all she needed to know that her daughter was still alive in some way. "They told me you have a daughter too. Take care of her, stay close. Because some mothers only learn too late that love isn't in the resume. It's in breakfast time, in the little notes, in quiet moments. I lost mine, and now all I have left is this, talking to you. Because maybe you'll understand." Outside, the nurse passed by the glass window but didn't interrupt. There was something sacred about that moment. A reunion only understood by those who've known the weight of absence. Olivia kissed the patient's forehead with reverence. Then she stood up, held the crucifix between her fingers and whispered, "Thank you, God, for letting me see her one more time, even if in another body." And as she walked out of the room expecting nothing in return, she didn't know that Sophia had been watching from a distance, with teary eyes, and for the first time, a heart without its armor. Sophia stood frozen in the hallway as if her feet refused to carry her forward. The scene she had witnessed through the window of room 303 wouldn't leave her mind. That woman she had sent away, now sitting there, holding the patient's hand, with a serenity that cut deep. It was a brutal contrast. Sophia, the head nurse so used to controlling every corner of that hospital, now felt herself shrinking inside. Guilt was like a mirror, finally turned toward her. She returned to the records room, locked the door, and sat down. On the desk was the surgical report. And there, printed in cold type, was the confirmation. Olivia Santos, 23 years old. Deceased, following a traffic accident. Compatible donor. The name, the age, identical to her own daughter's. Sophia touched the paper as if it were sacred. A cruel coincidence. Or perhaps, a warning. That something was deeply wrong with how she had been living her life. She grabbed her phone, opened her daughter's contact. The message history was short, dry, almost mechanical. Text me when you arrive. Can't talk now, I'm in a meeting. We'll talk later. Messages from an absent mother trying to control from a distance what was no longer in her hands. She remembered the last time they were together. A silent dinner, with avoided eye contact and a phone on the table. Her daughter had tried to start a conversation, but she had been too busy worrying about the transplant wing's audit. Suddenly, she stood up like someone jolted awake from a restless dream. She went to the hallway bathroom and stared at her reflection. Her face was still well kept, hair perfectly pinned, makeup subtle. But her eyes looked different. For the first time in a long while, there were cracks there. And behind them, something trying to break through. Regret. From the far end of the nurse's station, she heard a faint laugh. It was her daughter, interning in the pediatric wing. Sophia almost walked toward her, but she froze. She was afraid of not knowing what to say, afraid of being met with the same coldness she had always imposed. The words felt trapped somewhere in the past, buried between forgotten childhoods and long silences. She realized she had built far too many walls, hoping love would wait on the other side. But love needs presence. And time. She returned to her desk and sat in silence, reopened the report, and for the first time she read it with her heart. The donor was the daughter of that humble woman, the one she had humiliated, the one who didn't shout, didn't fight back, but remained, like a tree that withstands a storm. Olivia had confronted her without a single word, and now, even unintentionally, she was teaching her what it meant to truly be a mother. And as the day came to a close, Sophia understood. Some scars never fade, but they can teach you how not to wound again. But for that to happen, she would have to do something she had never learned to do: approach without armor. Sophia woke before her alarm. The house was silent, as always. The coffee from the automatic machine was ready, but she left it sitting on the counter. For the first time in years, she sat at the kitchen table without her phone in hand. Her eyes landed on a picture frame she hadn't truly noticed in ages. A photo of her daughter at 7 in a yellow dress, her teeth still crooked. She remembered that day. She remembered the promise she made to never let her feel alone. And there, in that magazine-perfect kitchen, she realized just how far she had strayed from that promise. At the hospital, Sophia walked slowly through the halls. Her posture remained upright, but something in her gaze no longer commanded fear. It was as if the weight of arrogance had been replaced by the weariness of someone who had finally seen the cost of her choices. That afternoon, she found her daughter in the staff break room. She was sitting reading something on her phone, earbuds in. Sophia approached and sat across from her, uninvited. Her daughter looked up, surprised. There was a chasm between them, a gulf carved by years of silence and absence disguised as, "I'm doing this for you." "I need to talk to you," Sophia said plainly. Her daughter removed the earbuds and waited. No warmth, no open anger, just distance. And that somehow hurt more. I've been thinking about how much I've failed you. I always pushed you to be mature, responsible, focused, but I've been an absent mother. Too busy to notice when all you wanted was to talk. Her daughter didn't reply, but she didn't walk away either. And to Sophia, that was already something. She took a deep breath and went on. Yesterday, a woman showed me what real love looks like. Even in the middle of deep pain, all she wanted was to be close to her daughter, even in silence. And me, I wasn't even there for your silences. The young woman looked at her for a few seconds, then lowered her gaze to the paper cup in her hands. I tried talking to you so many times, Mom, but you were always handling something more important. I know, and there's no excuse for that. All I have is regret. Sophia stood up. She didn't want to push any further. She gently touched her daughter's shoulder before leaving. I'll try to fix what I can, even if it takes time, even if you can't forgive me now. That night when she got home, Sophia didn't turn on the TV, didn't open her laptop. She sat on the couch holding that childhood photo in her hands and cried. For the first time, she let the pain out. Not out of shame, but out of longing for what she herself had unknowingly destroyed. Because some wounds only time can heal, but others, only forgiveness can rebuild. And Sophia still didn't know if time would be kind to her. The sunlight streamed through the hospital windows with an unusual softness that morning. For the first time, the light wasn't cold or impersonal. In room 303, Elizabeth Carter was awake. Her eyes were still heavy from the sedatives, but her awareness was slowly returning. When Olivia entered, Elizabeth recognized her, not with her mind, but with her heart. It was as if something deep inside whispered, she was here before everything. Olivia smiled gently, holding a simple bouquet of wildflowers. "Good morning, dear," she said, taking a seat beside the bed. Elizabeth, still unsure of who this woman was, nodded with warmth. "I feel like I know you," she whispered. "Have you been here?" "Yes, I have been, I am, and I will be as long as you need me." The words came with a quiet strength, the same strength that had carried Olivia from the very beginning. Elizabeth placed her hand over her chest, above the scar from the transplant. She cried for the first time since waking up. A soft, grateful, confused kind of cry. And Olivia simply held her hand, letting the moment say everything no medical explanation could ever express. There was something greater than medicine here, greater than coincidence. There was shared life. In the days that followed, the visits became routine. Their conversations grew, even if slow and sparse. Elizabeth, who once hid behind numbers and contracts, began to tell stories of her childhood, of mistakes she'd made, of things she had never dared say to anyone. And Olivia listened, as a mother, as a friend, as someone who knew the weight and healing power of a silent presence. On the week of her discharge, the two of them walked side by side to the hospital's exit. Sophia saw them from a distance. She didn't come closer, but for the first time she felt deep respect for the woman who had turned pain into presence. Outside, as the wind tousled her newly freed hair, Elizabeth turned to Olivia. "I don't know what God did, but I feel like you're a part of me now. Like my heart finally learned how to love again, because it came from someone who truly knew how to love." Olivia smiled, eyes glistening. "And you gave me a new reason to keep walking." They embraced there, on the cold sidewalk of a hospital that had once been a place of humiliation. There was no crowd, no music, but there was redemption, and there was hope. Olivia, who had lost her daughter, now gained someone who, without knowing, carried not only her daughter's heart, but the purpose she left behind. Because sometimes, God allows pain to break us, just so He can show us that love still knows how to stitch us back together. Olivia never had luxury, status, or a voice that echoed through halls. But what she carried, no glass display in a hospital could ever show. Yes, she lost her daughter. But she never lost her dignity, nor the courage to keep going, even when the world insisted she didn't belong. Her strength lived in silence, in the way she stood firm without needing to explain herself. And in the end, it was that very silence that changed everything. Because some pain demands to be heard, and some speaks loudest without making a sound. This story isn't about loud victories. It's about redemption without a stage. About an apology that was never spoken, yet still echoed. It's about a friendship born from tragedy. About two women who didn't connect through words but through shared feeling. It's about what happens when faith walks beside grief, not to erase the pain, but to carry it with more humanity. Olivia wasn't looking for applause or even justice. She just wanted to be present. And it was that presence that quietly transformed everything around her. Now tell me, how many stories like this go unnoticed just because we judge the person on the other side of the counter? How many times has prejudice blinded us to the truth? Maybe today is the day to listen in silence, to look with more compassion, to stop waiting for tragedy to finally recognize the beauty of quiet courage. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to our channel, hit the bell icon, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Sometimes a story like this is exactly what someone needs to keep going.